Dorothy, page 2. They? Asked Dorothy, comparing the boot next to her own shoe. It was quite a bit larger. The dead bitch had fairly big feet, it seemed. The man shrugged, still captivated by the shoe. You know, they do. Oh, them. And they convey protection to the wearer too, another, younger midget in yellow shorts piped up. Obviously not from falling houses, Dorothy remarked. She made a decision and sat down on the lowest step of the porch, shucking off one of her own shoes. There was a collective intake of breath from the watching crowd as she pulled the salvage boot on and tied the laces up. Somehow it seemed to fit perfectly. It's certainly very comfortable, she commented, after a few moments of lopsided walking up and down. The little people watched her dejectedly as she quickly donned the other one. Yes, very comfortable, and good instep support too. I could almost believe they were magic. They are, said the leader. Of course they are, Dorothy replied. Now, who can tell me where I am? She flashed her best sunny smile at them. This is the West, the leader informed her. She, he pointed at the now bootless corpse, was the ruler here. She was the wicked bitch of the West. Catchy title. Dorothy eyed the legs and wondered if there was a charge of death by house somewhere in her future. They'd have to catch her first. So, west of where? Oz, of course. The man frowned. Dorothy patted Toto's head and grimaced. How far is it to Kansas from here, then? Canvas? Now the midget looked puzzled. Kansas, she repeated, speaking slowly. Never heard of it. What country is this, then? Dorothy did a slow 360-degree turn, taking in the strange scenery. The bulbous yellow sun was sinking lower in the deep blue sky. I told you, Oz. West Oz. The midget shared a glance with his neighbour. Australia? Oz! Fine, don't tell me then. Dorothy scowled and pulled her long black coat a little tighter around her. It was getting chilly. Do you have a hotel in your village? What's a hotel? You're taking the piss, right? Dorothy was getting annoyed. You know, a place to stay for the night. Not big enough for you, the little man replied. Why don't you just stay in your flying house? He gestured at the building behind her. Falling house, Dorothy corrected, but under her breath. She had no idea whose house it was, in truth, though she wasn't going to tell them that. It had likely been swept up in the freak tornado that had caught her. She shrugged. May as well, I guess. Toto at her heels, and with the midget villagers looking on, she climbed the steps and pushed the front door, which was hanging ajar. The interior was totally normal. Kansas normal, anyway. Not wherever she currently was normal. The building and furnishings didn't seem to be affected by their transportation at all, as if being ripped from the foundations and being dumped God knows where wasn't really worth getting shaken up about. Stepping over a child's toy, she wondered where the owners were. Probably in a storm cellar, she thought, wondering where the draft was coming from. Flicking the light switch did nothing, unsurprisingly, so she wandered through the abandoned abode in ever-encroaching gloom until she came to the rear door. The midget leader had followed her in, and was looking around at the decor, eyes wide, keeping a respectable distance from Toto all the while. "What kind of place is this?" he said, as she wandered back from the house's small kitchen. "Some poor working-class families, I'd say," she said, pointing at a photo of a young couple with a child. "Where are they, then?" he pursued. "Did you kill them too?" "They were probably just not in," she replied, frowning at the casual implication of mass murder. Pulling on the fridge door revealed a number of edible items. The interior was still cool. "Ice magic!" the midget exclaimed, touching a shelf with his finger. "Electricity!" she countered, helping herself to some cheese, a bowl of salad and a Coke. "Here, have a drink." She passed the can to him, taking another for herself. While he worked out how to open it, she managed to locate some dog food, which she opened and doled out to Toto, before going back to her salad. "Nectar," the dwarf said, finally figuring out the ring pull and taking a sip, followed by another, longer drink. It's mostly sugar, actually. Dorothy sat at the breakfast bar and looked out of the window. Most of the little people were still outside, huddled together as they waited for their leader to return. It was almost totally dark now, and the absence of artificial light was noticeable. She took another bite of tomato and frowned. The night sky was ablaze with stars, far more dense than she'd ever seen before. "Where's the nearest town?" she asked. The dwarf leader, still clutching his can, rubbed his beard for a moment before answering. The dwarf leader, still clutching his can, rubbed his beard for a moment before answering. "I'm not well travelled," he said, "but Mekar is apparently a day or so down the road." He waved a hand. "Though I've never been there, and Reflection isn't too far either, so I've heard. Otherwise, I only know of the city." "The city?" "Oz, of course." Again he frowned at her ignorance. "Imaginative naming system here," she said. "Your name's not Oz too, is it?" She took a swig of soda. "Of course not. I'm Chubby. What? What's wrong?" Dorothy had just sprayed a mouthful of fizzy drink over the table. "Nothing, nothing," she said, mopping her mouth. "That's a lovely name. I've a cousin called Chubby, actually. Very nice person, very nice." She nodded and took a bite of cheese. "I think I should tell the others to go back to the village," Chubby said, after a few minutes of watching her eat. She nodded, but said nothing in return, and then watched as he waddled out of the house, still holding the can of Coke. Toto, who had settled himself down on the sofa after eating his meal, wandered over and put his giant head upon her knee. Sighing, she split the remaining cheese in half and gave one piece to him, while stuffing the rest in her mouth. "Well, boy, wherever we are, it looks like we're on our own. Maybe we should turn in for the night." The dog whined in reply, and then turned his head towards the door. Dorothy followed his gaze, and saw Chubby re-enter the room. "What will you do, mistress?" he asked. "I'm going to get some sleep," she replied, standing up and brushing crumbs off her lap. "Oh." The midget stood there for a moment, seeming uncertain. "And what about tomorrow?" "I think I'll head over to this Oz place that everyone's talking about." "Oh," he said again. "What about the house, then?" "When I go, you can—" She paused, as a train of thought wound its way through her mind. "Look after it for me," she concluded. "Look after it?" Chubby's eyes widened. "You know, keep it clean, dust the shelves and so on." She waved a hand in royal fashion. "Thank you, mistress," he cried. "Thank you, thank you." Think nothing of it." Dorothy raised an eyebrow. "I'll put my cousin, Lumpy, in charge of the task, whilst we travel to the city." "We? You want to come with me?" she asked. "Why?" "It would be rude to do anything else, mistress. You must have an escort." "Well, if you insist, I guess," she said. "But you'll have to keep up with me. I'm very fit for my age, mistress." "OK, then. And it's Dorothy, not mistress." "Yes, mistress." Dorothy took a deep breath and, shaking her head, wandered off towards the bedroom she had previously discovered. At the door she turned to Chubby, who had followed her. "You can find your own place to sleep," she said. "I suggest the sofa." Chubby went bright red and nodded frantically. "Of course, mistress. Good night to you. I'll see you in the morning." So saying, he retreated back towards the living room. Nudging Toto in before her, Dorothy entered the bedroom and closed the door firmly. After a moment's thought, she wedged a chair under the handle. A minute later she changed her mind, and removed the chair and replaced it with, some difficulty, a large, heavy chest of drawers. That task complete, she checked the window, making sure it was secure, and then used the ensuite bathroom, taking care to use as little water left in the tank as possible. Her ablutions finished, she stripped off in the now very dark room and fell into the bed. Toto climbed up beside her. Within minutes she was fast asleep.